So after doing my research, I found that my fans mainly want to see me yell at garbage kid shows. Allow me to give you sick bastards what you want. Sup people, Shiny Piece here, and welcome to my journey to hell. While I wasn't allowed to watch much TV while I was growing up, I did manage to catch some shows that piqued my interest under my mom's nose, including 2011's Scaredy Squirrel. I vaguely remember somewhat enjoying the show when it first came out, like the brain-dead 8-year-old that I was, but when I returned to it a few years later, I hated the fact that anyone gave approval to its existence. I still hate the fact that anyone gave approval to its existence. Looking back on Scaredy Squirrel, everything about it is terrible. It's annoying, it's gross, it's unfunny. It rehashes ideas from other cartoons without any clue of what made them work in the first place. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's not waste any more time and finally start talking about this pile of rodent shit. The Canadian cartoon Scaredy Squirrel is based off of a book series by the same name written by Melanie Watt. They were simple kids' books about a squirrel learning to overcome his fears, and often learning that said fears were all in his head. The cartoon adaptation has absolutely nothing to do with the book series other than it shares the same name, and the books don't give me enough material to make a comparison. So my deepest apologies to the two people who care about the Scaredy Squirrel lore, but I'll be looking at the show as its own thing. The first episode starts as if it already expects you to know who everyone is, without so much as giving an introduction to the main character. Even if you did read the original books by Melanie Watt, you'll still be at a loss as the cartoon has an entirely different setting than said books. Well, maybe the opening will give us a clue on what the premise is. This opening is absolutely fucking perfect. It lets you know that the show is littered with unoriginality, but tries to hide it with obnoxious noise and cheap flash animation. All joking aside, the opening doesn't tell you anything about the show's premise, and the series doesn't have a proper pilot, making it difficult for new viewers to get settled. The first episode is about the main character, Scaredy Squirrel, having a prank war with a rat named Patty, so maybe you'd think that the show would be about their dynamic, but Patty only makes a few more appearances afterwards. It took me 5 episodes to figure out the basic gist. Scaredy Squirrel follows the shenanigans of the main character by the same name, a quirky young squirrel who works as a stacker in a grocery market named the Stashin' Horde in the fictional city of Balsa. It would have been nice if the first episode or the theme established that, but being somewhat competent is overrated. For a show about someone called Scaredy Squirrel, you'd think the premise would be about a squirrel constantly being afraid of something or learning to overcome his fears, similar to Courage the Cowardly Dog. Well, unlike what his name suggests, our MC isn't cowardly at all. He's very social, he always stands up for what he believes in, he's not afraid to speak his mind, he's one to seize the day, and he even gives speeches in front of large crowds in almost every episode. I'm a better example of cowardice because I can't speak into my phone, I mean my mic, without feeling like I'm gonna die. Very few episodes are about Scaredy having a particular fear or him learning to get past them. Most of the time, they're about a problem that Scaredy's found himself in, and sometimes the townspeople making things worse due to their stupidity. The way the show portrays the main character, Scaredy, is confusing to say the least. Sometimes it tries to portray him as a neurotic neat freak who strives for perfection and always takes the safest route. Other times, it tries to portray him as a carefree extrovert who rarely gets embarrassed and who just wants to have fun and live in excitement. These two things do not mesh. But to get used to Scaredy, he's the closest thing to a likable character in this show. Of course, he's got to be accompanied by the annoying fat sidekick who has no reason to exist other than to be fat and loud because fuck creativity.
He's not a criminal, right?
Well, that's what's wrong with
But if he is it my fault?
Dave is stupid and gross. His personality begins and ends there. I'm all for stupid characters in cartoons, but they've gotta have more going for them than just being stupid. Even though Scaredy is a neat freak who tends to avoid gross people, he and Dave are for some reason best friends. Most of the time when they're together, Scaredy looks like he'd rather be with anyone else. If the show actually was about our MC learning to overcome his fears, I could see Dave being an extroverted friend who's always trying to show Scaredy that he has nothing to be afraid of and help him learn to pursue his dreams with courage and confidence. The antics that Scaredy and Dave either cause or get caught up in are usually directed at the manager of the Stash and Hoard, Nestor.
High five! Right up here. Come on. You can do it. Get back to work!
Oh, so he's like Benson, only minus any humor, charm, or likability. Nestor is supposed to be the uptight straight man to the show's chaos, his bitterness directed at our chipper MC. But he really doesn't have a good reason to hate Scaredy. Nestor is established as a serious boss who follows every rule in the book and who has to have everything going just right. Scaredy is a respectful and active employee who loves his job as a stacker more than anything and makes top quality displays on a daily basis. There is no reason for Nestor to hate him as much as he does. That would be like YouTube screwing over their big names who bring in most of their revenue. Wouldn't that be stupid? The excuse that they try to give for Nestor's feelings is that he's jealous of how his mother, the store owner, seems to love Scaredy's ideas more than his. Oh yeah, there's this really depressing subplot about Nestor always looking to gain affection from his mother who never shows any love towards him.
Are you trying to rent my room? It's my room. The whole house is mine. Don't you forget it. My pillow. Everything is mine. Mine. Mine.
Nestor, your mother said she loves you. Nestor, your mother said she loves you.
I was watching a kid's comedy, wasn't I? If it's meant to be funny, a loveless relationship between family isn't what I'd call comical. Wait. So, we have a slice of life about anthropomorphic animals where the main character is an overly happy optimist who loves his dead-end job, has an idiotic and fat best friend, and unintentionally annoys a grumpy guy from his job.
Hey, Frank, do you think it's a good idea to steal ideas from SpongeBob? I think people will notice.
Nope! No one's ever heard of that show! What am I saying? Scaredy Squirrel is nothing at all like SpongeBob. The biggest difference is that SpongeBob is funny. Since we're on the topic, while the supporting cast in SpongeBob is humorous, charismatic, and quotable, the supporting cast in this piece of trash is unfunny, not interesting, and doesn't have a single memorable line. There's a duo made of a beaver and a donkey that have the same character of being idiotic slobs. There's the cliche ugly girl who's obsessed with the main character because he's the main character. There's a frog whose main gimmick is that she burps and she's also a secret agent. That's a sentence I just had to type and read aloud. Where did my life go wrong? The tone of Scaredy Squirrel is about as inconsistent as its main protagonist. At times it tries to be an animated sitcom sprinkled with cartoonish exaggeration, and other times it tries to be a bizarre, off-the-walls mindfuck. Now, I'm the first person to enjoy a surreal cartoon that's a complete detachment from reality like Chowder or Regular Show. But what those shows understand that Scaredy Squirrel doesn't is that if you're going to have a crazy, noisy, bizarre show, you have to establish that it will be that way in your pilot and keep the tone consistent. For example, the pilot of Regular Show, tying in rock, paper, scissors 100 times summons a monster that tries to suck up the world in a black hole. The pilot of Chowder, the main cast nearly get killed by a dish made up of foods that don't even exist. You know the second their pilots end that they're going to be surreal and weird, and they keep their tones consistent throughout. The pilot of Scaredy Squirrel, the MC and a side character have a cartoonish prank war. That doesn't translate to giant pickle monster destroys city. The weird episodes are as rare as my chances of finding happiness, as the show mainly focuses on the safe and cliche stories that we've seen in just about every show ever. Like, the MC gets a crush on a girl who turns out to be completely insane. The MC gets scammed by a shady salesman to buy crap that doesn't work and that he doesn't need, and paying for it with his house, which leads to him scamming the salesman back. One of the side characters has an older sibling whom they feel outclassed by and who's also come to town to visit. But it's alright because their sibling turns out to be evil. They love that one so much they did it twice. With such amazing characters and a super funny style of humor consisting of burps and farts, I'm sure it comes as a huge surprise that the show was cancelled 3 seasons in with a finale as non-existent as its pilot. Overall, Scaredy Squirrel is a confused mess. The main cast feel like flanderized SpongeBob characters, the humor is awful, it can't decide what tone it wants to have, and the overall experience leaves a disgusting aftertaste. If you want to see something fun, smart, and witty, then I'd recommend anything else. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go talk about a show that I actually like for a change. With that, I'm out.